Hello, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and I'm back with another weekly video where I'm going to share what I was up to preserving food, cooking in the kitchen, gardening, all of the other fun homestead activities. Things are really starting to change on the homestead. Everything is really coming alive, and when you are someone who grows your own food, your life is very much tied to the seasons, and you feel these seasonal changes deeply. We feel it in our diet, in our daily activities, in everything that we do. And so, one of the major changes that is happening here is that we're finally able to harvest some fresh produce. You guys followed me on the pantry challenge, and you know that it's a long winter of us eating our preserved food. Now, our diet's changing to the point where we can eat fresh fruits and vegetables in abundance again. So this week I was able to harvest some radishes for the first time, as well as some greens for homegrown salads. And so I thought my first activity for the week, I would share with you one of my favorite ways to eat the fresh vegetables that come out of our garden. We love to make little veggie trays, and right now, this time of year, it's just radishes and the carrots that we have in storage that we're eating. But as the garden continues to grow and change, we will be eating a whole lot more fresh vegetables. Broccoli will soon be available, celery, all sorts of things like that. So, one of my favorite things to do for the children before we start school for the morning, which is usually sometime between 9 and 10, I'll run out to the garden, grab some radishes, grab some carrots from storage, and I'll chop up a little veggie plate for them. And then I'm going to show you how I prepare a vegetable dip for this, a dairy-free vegetable dip. And I like to just set this out for the children to snack on throughout the day. So I start by putting a little bit of mayonnaise in a bowl here. Homemade mayonnaise works great, and I've done videos on how you do that. And then this mix right here is from Azure Standard. It's their veggie herb mix, and it has been my favorite for many, many years. I use this to make veggie dip. I also use it to make salad dressing. But the last couple times I've went to order, they have been out of it. So here in this video, I'm going to show you how I'm going to make this myself. I add a little bit of water to the mix of mayonnaise and the herbs, and I just mix that together, set this out for the children, and then they will just come and pick at the vegetables, dip them in the dip, all during school time. And this is a way to kind of hold them over between breakfast and lunch. So as I mentioned, Azure has been out of the veggie dip mix, but besides being out of it and the inconvenience of that, there were some questionable ingredients in it that I wasn't necessarily loving. Things like yeast extract and maltodextrin and all sorts of things. So for a while, I have been wanting to figure out a way to make this at home. So I wrote down a list of all of the ingredients that are in that veggie dip mix, and I pulled out from my freeze-dried stash of herbs and vegetables. I have some roasted garlic that I freeze-dried a couple months ago with you guys. This is celery salt, celery from last year's garden mixed with salt. This is freeze-dried tomato powder. And then this next jar was citrus peels that I had freeze-dried and ground down to make a citrus extract. Freeze-dried spinach. We just have some leftover onions. That's the last of the onions from last year. We have dill, parsley. A child labeled that for me. A little bit of chili powder. And then I have some bags of freeze-dried green peppers and some shredded carrots from last year's garden. So these are all of the ingredients that are in that veggie mix from Azure Standard. I'm going to try to make it myself. So I'm starting by putting in 1/2 a cup of the garlic. I just put in the rest of these freeze-dried onions. And then I'm also going to do 1/2 cup of the celery salt. That was in a 50-50 ratio of pink Himalayan salt and freeze-dried celery powder. Next, we're going to put in some shredded carrots here. We're going to put in the green peppers. I'm not measuring this. I'm just kind of putting them in as I want to. Here is some spinach. I just put about 1/4 a cup, not as much of that. I'm trying to follow the ingredient order from the ingredient list, and the higher up on the list, the more of it is typically in the product. So as I go and add these ingredients that were at the bottom of the list, I'm just putting a little bit less in. So I put in the tomato powder, the citrus extract, the chili powder. We have our dill here. And then we're going to sprinkle in some parsley. And one of my complaints about the Azure brand version of this is that the freeze-dried vegetable chunks were rather large, and when it would rehydrate, as you were dipping your veggies in, you would get kind of a chunk of that vegetable. So I knew that when I made this, I wanted to blend it down so that the chunks of vegetable were much smaller. I don't want to taste a vegetable chunk. I just want the flavor of the veggie in it. And it worked out great. So I just did a small batch of this first time to see if I like it. And then we will do a much bigger batch here in the future to get us through the rest of the summer. Because as I said, we're doing these veggie trays just about every day or every other day, or we're turning this into salad dressing. So speaking of salad dressing, let me show you how I'm going to use this powder that we just made to make a salad dressing. So I'm starting with a little bit of red wine vinegar. Sometimes I use apple cider vinegar, balsamic vinegar, any kind of vinegar works. And then after that, I add just a little bit of water to it. I have this great carafe here from my grandma. I kind of inherited it from her, that shows me the levels that you need to add. Now we're adding some olive oil, and then I just sprinkle in a little bit of that powder that we just made. Shake it up, and we have a wonderful homemade salad dressing without all the yucky ingredients in some of those store-bought salad dressings. It's just so easy to make this yourself. So about once a week, I'll make a container of the salad dressing and put it in the fridge, and then as we eat our salads throughout the week, we have this available. So speaking of salads, that is the other thing that we have growing right now. Some of our spinach is big enough to harvest little baby spinach leaves, so I've been going through the garden every day and just grabbing some of those. We have some baby greens available, and then I'm able to put together a little salad with some of our homegrown radishes. And this is just the beginning of salad season. As it goes on, we'll be having these a whole lot more often. Right now, it's just about enough to have a salad every couple days. And we're going to put our homemade dressing that we just made over the top of it, and I have to tell you that this was delicious. So I will not be buying that veggie herb mix from Azure Standard anymore. Another herb mix that I don't buy anymore is taco seasoning. And while I was in making other seasoning blends, I figured I need to restock my taco seasoning. So I'm starting out by putting a half a cup of paprika. Next, I'm going to do a half a cup of cumin, and those are the two main ingredients in my taco seasoning. Now we're going to do a little bit less of the other ingredients. So I'm just doing about a fourth a cup of roasted garlic powder. The next thing we're going to add is some oregano, just about a fourth a cup of that. Now we need a little bit of spice, so I'm just doing about an eighth a cup of cayenne powder. These were freeze-dried cayennes from our garden last year, and then just about an eighth of a cup of salt. And that is all I put in my taco seasoning. Just mix that together, and then I'm ready to make tacos once our cilantro in the garden is ready to go. Another exciting thing that happened on the homestead, actually last week, the chicks started to hatch that we had in the incubator, and we had them in the house for about 2 or 3 days until it warmed up a little bit, and then we moved them out to their brooder in the garage. And the care of the chicks now falls on Levi, my 8-year-old. It's the perfect chore for a little boy to help learn a little bit of responsibility and kind of ease him into animal husbandry and all of the great character development that can happen when you put a child in charge of animal care. So we're loving having these chicks. They're going to be added, the females will be added to our egg-laying flock once they get big enough to integrate, and any young roosters will be processed for meat when I start canning chicken soup and things like that at the end of the summer. So we're hoping for a good mix of both in here. It's time to start water glassing eggs. I'll put a video in the description of this video that explains more about this, but I thought I'd show you how I do this. I fill a jar with 2 ounces of my calcium hydroxide, which is the lime, and 2 quarts of water, and then I slowly just add clean eggs to that jar as I receive them, as the children bring them in from chore time. And usually it takes me about a week to fill a gallon jar, and that is typically my goal. If I can fill 1 gallon a week through this heavy egg production season, typically in April, May, and June, then that will give us enough eggs to get us through the winter egg laying break that my hens typically take. So as I get to the top of the jar, I put as many eggs in the top as I want to, and then I'm going to create one more jar of the lime solution. So I'll put 1 more ounce of cow lime with a quart of water and just top off that jar. And then I'll start a new jar with the rest of that solution, add 2 more quarts of water, 2 more ounces of the cow lime, and then just keep going and filling the next jar. And that is what I do just consistently throughout the egg laying season. And this is what works really well for us. This will let us have eggs available all through the winter months. And these are the eggs that I like to use for baking and things where I prefer to have a raw egg instead of a freeze-dried egg that is reconstituted. Now, one mistake I made last year was taking my water glassed eggs down into the cellar, and I think that trip caused a lot of the eggs to crack. They just banged around in the jars. So this year we will be storing those eggs upstairs and not moving them downstairs so that it will protect the eggs a little better. Now, I have done many videos over the last couple of years showing the ways that I like to use excess eggs, and I'll link a couple of those in the video description as well. Everything from making pasta to different baking recipes that use a lot of eggs. Many of you have asked if we have excess eggs, why don't we give them away or sell the extras? And actually, we do give a lot of eggs away. We obviously need to preserve a lot for our family of 10 to get through the winter, but Adam works at a university and he has student workers that I know struggle with groceries and things, so we get a lot of egg cartons and we fill them, and we have these cute little cartons that hold about 6 eggs, and Adam likes to bring those in and surprise some of his student workers with those eggs, and I know that's a blessing to them. So yeah, there's only so many eggs that our family needs or that we need to preserve. So if there are excesses, we do prefer to give them away. But I am going to show you in this video one other way that I like to use up extra eggs. We've been doing a lot of hard-boiled eggs just as snacks. We've also been making a lot of deviled eggs, but pickled eggs is something that I haven't shown you that yet this year. Now, I've shown you in the past my recipe for making pickled eggs from scratch, but I want to show you a method for pickling eggs that is really easy. It just takes a few minutes and doesn't require you making a brine on your own. So whenever whether it's store-bought or home-canned pickled items, let's say it's pickled hot peppers, banana peppers, pickled cucumbers, whenever we empty the jar of the vegetables and we have the brine left over, I like to get another use out of that. I will just add a little bit of freeze-dried beet powder, and that gives it that fun pink color to your eggs. And we just mix that in with that extra brine and pour it over the hard-boiled eggs, and you just have pickled eggs. All they need to do is sit in the fridge for 24 hours and they absorb some of that pickle flavor and the beautiful pink color. And this is just a really easy way to get another use out of that brine. It saves you the time of having to make a brine from scratch to pickle your eggs, and our family really enjoys this. We love the flavor. We've even done this with olives, anything like that. It's just a great way to repurpose something that you would otherwise just put down the drain or throw away. So this week, along with our vegetable trays that we've been eating as snacks, we've been doing a lot of these pickled eggs. I'll just put these out with lunch, and the kids that want a little bit of extra protein will grab 1 or 2 of these eggs and put them on their plate. I love the beautiful pink color. For some reason, my little ones, there's something really novel about that. It makes them want to eat the eggs more when they're that beautiful pink color. But otherwise, breakfasts these days have just been scrambled eggs pretty much every day for breakfast with some kind of baked good. And then as the garden begins to get more productive, that will change. Usually we'll have our scrambled eggs with something like Swiss chard or kale or whatever other items are in abundance in the garden. Speaking of abundance, what we have growing on the property right now in abundance are dandelions. They are everywhere, and we don't want to waste this amazing food. So besides using the greens for our salads, something that I like to do is harvest the flower heads to make a dandelion jelly. So I'm just going around the property and popping off the heads here. It's just something fun to do. The kids will sometimes I'll send the kids out to do this for me, and it's a neat way to use something that is otherwise considered a weed on your property. So once I get my flowers in the kitchen, I do need to rinse them off really well to get any dirt or debris or maybe even pests that could be hidden in the petals. So I just fill the jar with water and swish it around and drain it out until the water is running clear. It usually only takes 2 or 3 times. Then I put them in the pot. Fill that pot with at least 5 cups of water. A little bit of that is going to evaporate. Our goal is to end up with 4 cups of dandelion tea. After it boiled for about 20 minutes, we had our wonderful dandelion tea, and now I just need to strain the rest of those flowers out. Some people prefer to just use the petals, but I find that to be a lot of work, and it doesn't really affect the flavor of the jelly if you just leave the green part, the stem of the flower in there. So that is what we do. Now, after we've strained out the flower bits, I'm going to get approximately 4 cups of juice. Now, our goal is to end up with 4 half pints of jelly for this recipe, but we're also going to add some other ingredients to it that are going to bulk it up. So if you have a little less than 4 cups of juice, that is not going to hurt anything. Now you can see it's kind of a brownish color. We're going to add a little bit of lemon juice, approximately a half a cup. That was from frozen lemon juice that I had preserved last January. And as you can see, when you add that lemon juice, it turns it more of a golden yellow color. And it's really beautiful when you get it in the jar. Now to that, we are going to add our pectin. We are using a low sugar pectin. Every pectin has different instructions for how you're going to get it to set properly, so you just need to follow the instructions on the packet or the container that you get your pectin from. For this particular pectin, you don't even need to add sugar if you don't want to, but since we're using dandelions instead of a sweet fruit, we are going to end up adding sugar a little bit later. But I just need to bring that pectin and lemon juice mixture to a boil for approximately 5 minutes. I'm going to take it off of the heat, and I decided to add a little bit of orange extract. This was from freeze-dried oranges that I just soaked in vodka for about 6 months, and it made a delicious orange extract that adds wonderful flavor. And then we're adding that 1 cup of sugar. And then after we add that and stir it around, we do need to bring it back to a boil one more time in order for it to set properly. And then we can start preparing our jars here. As I mentioned, we're going for 4 half pints. That is what the recipe will fill. And so I'm just using my 4 jars canning funnel here to fill my jars. And what I love about this funnel is that it shows the markings for headspace on the funnel itself. I am going for 1/4 inch headspace, and this is just a really handy tool. It prevents you from having to get out a ruler or something to measure after you fill. So I will have a link in the video description if you are looking for a canning funnel like this, and you can get 10% off of it with my code. But I had enough of the jelly to fill my 4 half pints, and then I had a little bit of extra left over that we're just going to put in a separate little container here and put in the fridge, and we will use this up this week. Now, dandelion jelly is just amazing. It tastes like honey. It reminds you of spring. I love this jelly. It's such a treat, something for the children. It's just different than your typical fruit jellies, and my children love this. Now, before we get our lids on, we do need to make sure to wipe the rims of our jars here. Anytime you're canning something sticky like a jelly, if you get it on the rim, that can prevent you from having a good solid seal with your lids. Speaking of lids, I'm going to be using my 4 jars canning lids, and just like with the canning funnel, if you would like to get 10% off of some quality canning lids, check out the link in the description and use my code. These are my favorite lids. I've been using them now since I think about 2020, and I very rarely, if ever, have seal failures. So compared to my results with ball canning lids recently, I get much better results with these 4 jars lids. So all right, since this is jelly, all we need to do is get it in the water bath canner for 10 minutes. And when it's done, we're going to have some beautiful shelf-stable dandelion jelly made from something we foraged in our yard, and it's going to taste delicious. So to try out the little extra jelly that we had in the fridge, my little helper Benjamin here helped me make some whole grain biscuits, and then we spread that dandelion jelly on those, and the kids really enjoyed that. So there we go. There's our first canning project of this season. I have a feeling it's just going to be ramping up here in the coming months, and I'm excited to bring you along on that journey. So now we're trying to get the summer garden in the ground. Mother's Day weekend is typically when I plant out, but the forecast has looked lovely, so I'm already starting to direct sow some seeds, and we're working on hardening off everything that was growing inside under the grow lights, like our tomatoes and peppers. And I'm excited to bring you along as our summer garden begins to come to life here. I have a really busy week ahead of me getting everything in the ground. But I will be back next week with more content from my kitchen and garden. In the meantime, I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and we will be back next week, friends. Bye.